Well, thank you so much for taking the time with me today, and I really appreciate it. I've been looking forward to diving into Bight.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome, Mark. And how did this film come into your life? How did Bight come into your life?
It was around the pandemic, and my business partner and a really good friend of mine of almost, actually, wow, better part of 2 decades, Mayada Walsh. We had talked about really wanting to create something. We were feeling a little restless, sitting around. Nothing was going on. The world was on hold. So we had talked about spending that time kind of maybe creating a project that we can play with and bring to life. And so we agreed it would be a good idea. And so she set out to writes a script with a co-writer, and a couple months kind of went by, and we talked about it, and a script showed up one day, and so we just started the early initial process, and so she basically was like, I want to write a role for you that I've never seen you play before, because she's very familiar with all of my work, and she wrote and her and Cameron both wrote the script, and they wrote roles for themselves. And we all just kind of said, let's not ask for permission. Let's just figure out how to make this. It started small. We started getting the initial production going, and I did my best with our budgetary constraints, and try to keep us under budget because I knew that there would always some obstacles that we wouldn't be able to foresee, which there were. And then we realized that we were really kind of creating something special, and decided to, this was initially just to pass the time, and then we realized we were making something pretty great. So we took it a little more seriously and treated it like a feature, and that ultimately led to what you watched.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great film. I mean, I love the tension between the characters. So, like, if you're into stories with tension between characters, this is a great one.
Yes, lots of relational tensions for sure, and physical tensions.
Yeah.
Pun intended.
See, you were also involved. You were. What were some of the main roles you ended up taking during the production? I know you were acting in the production, but you wore many hats, which is like people do a lot of times in independent filmmaking. So,
Absolutely.
so what was that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, wearing many hats, I've got kind of gotten used to at this point. I've acted for many years, and I actually became a producer by accident on a project many years ago. Just because I was wanting to make it the best that I could. I've unfortunately put a lot of heart and soul into a lot of projects that died on the hard drive and never saw the light of day because they just didn't make it through the process. Most people out there, I don't think realize that creating a feature film and having it actually reach the finish line and end up out in the world is a very small percentage of
Yeah.
what's being created out there, and so it's a feat in itself. So yeah, I became a producer years ago just because I was wanting to find the right cast, find the right locations, just putting out fires. And then my manager one day was like, you're producing this thing. I was like, oh, is that what producers do? And he's like, absolutely. So now with any of my independent features, I like to produce them just to make sure that they go from conception to final product, and that's what I did on this one. So I basically took the reins with the initial production, and you know, we were able to gather equipment from my in-house production company, and also borrow other equipment from other creative friends of ours, and kind of pull all that together. So outside of producing, yeah, the other hats I ended up wearing on this. I mean, at the end of the day, every hat that you wear is just an extension of producing, right? You got to do
Yeah.
whatever it takes to make it. So if that means grabbing coffee or ordering lunch too, that is a hat that you wear, which I definitely did. Producer on this, actor on this. I was the music supervisor. I created some original music with our composer Eric Desiderio. We have a fantastic score. He's just so freaking talented. What else? Oh, the opening title sequence I produced within my company White Room with Yori X, one of our artists who created it. Second unit directing. There were a lot of scenes that Mayada couldn't direct because she was in them, and then of course just a lot of extra stuff when you see the car driving and the drone work, and that opening shower scene, stuff like that. I just would step in to direct when Mayada wasn't available to do it, and I don't. I think. I mean, I'd have to look at the credits to see the other hats that I wore, but yeah, those were some of the main ones that I wore on this one, just to make sure that I got done.
So, what were some risks you was able to take on Bight that you wouldn't be able to do on like a bigger production or a bigger project? What are some like that independent film risk that you was able to take with this one?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, the silver lining to indie films is that you don't have a studio or non-creatives basically telling you how to create. So, um, this isn't this is very art house in nature. It's a very intimate project. Off the top of my head, some of the perks I believe would be just the story in general. A lot of studios might have said we need to make this more commercial, or we need to get these A-list actors, or we need to do this or shoot it this way, or like, but try to throw a formula into the mix. And this project definitely is not formulaic. Very very reminiscent, I think, of thrillers from the '90s, just like slow burn unfolding. Another is the control that I was able to have in the edit with pacing and just making sure that moments lived and glances were captured and things weren't rushed. Because I knew later on with music that I would kind of accentuate those longer silences or longer beats. So there's that, and then there's also the fact that you kind of get to decide how this thing wraps up and where it ends up. And yeah, I'm very grateful for, it offers a lot of stress and obstacles, independent filmmaking, but also offers a lot of creative expression that you can't otherwise get through the studio system.
Great. Was there any limitations that actually opened creative doors for you where you had to kind of think creatively?
Always, we call them happy accidents.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, just from a performance standpoint, when I'm busy running around putting out fires on set, or just trying to, help organize lunch or figuring out the gear that we need during the week ahead, I'm kind of wrapped up in that. And then I get thrown into a scene like the dinner scene where I have an opening monologue, and suddenly I'm like, I have to focus on acting. I think that creates a happy accident in the sense that you don't have time to get into your head, right? You're kind of just thrown right into the creative, and I think performance is better when you are not in your head and when you're relaxed into it. And then I'm trying to think of other limitations. Um, Initially the entire movie started with that opening car scene, and then ended with the car scene. And those limitations kind of caused us to kind of re-look at how we were shaping our protagonists in the beginning, and how we wanted to leave them in the end. It kind of created the opportunity to revisit that and do a few reshoots and add more layers to it, right? Where you initially wouldn't be able to do that. I think the limitations is what just kind of kept it contained and kept it kind of visually stunning and engaging via performance. Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but that's all I
Oh
can think.
yeah, yeah, I did. Um, was there moments in time when you were editing the film that when you was on set filming the movie, was there times when you was editing the movie or watching the edit like you're like, wow, that didn't land the way I thought it would?
Yeah, I mean there are definitely moments, if after you've done this a few times, you start to learn hard lessons that you get to apply to new productions. Um, as a producer on set, you're kind of already editing, and as a director, you're kind of editing in your head, right? Like
Yeah.
especially as a director, when you're building your shot list and you're planning out your days, like you're essentially trying to edit this scene in your head so you know that you have the proper coverage. But as a producer, yeah, there were moments too where we had some we had set out to grab some really engaging oneers. And for those that don't know what oneers are, they're just like a continuous long shot that kind of play out in a scene without cuts. Uh, we had a few of those planned that we were really hoping to execute, and you never know sometimes if it's going to work, if it's going to land until it's too late. So, there were moments where on set that I saw where it could potentially die in the scene, and would just in my head be like, okay, if it did die here, where would I need to be? I'd need to be able to cut between these two things. So then we would grab coverage of the scene within the oneer just in case. And a lot of it really, the silver lining to even there's a lot of great movement in this film. The camera is always moving in an engaging way. And that's the result of shooting kind of these oneers and cutting into them. So yeah, you are editing on set, uh, and then you're definitely, the edit later is a completely different animal. They say there's the movie you write, there's the movie you direct, and then there's the movie that you edit, right? Three different movies.
Yeah. What are some moments where you think like, I just love indie film, like on this film or other films? Can you tell me like some of those moments when you're like, wow, this is what it's all about? I love independent filmmaking.
Yeah, I think when you're just sitting there on set with your friends and you're there because you kind of created it yourself, right? You weren't invited in, you weren't uh, casted, you weren't hired. You created that environment. And then when you're just watching the screen and a shot is just like it lets you know that you're creating something special, right? I remember a specific moment when we were all on set and we had just done the dinner scene, and Maya's character Naomi is sitting down and she takes the chopsticks and she digs into a nice gooey bite of natto and brings it up to her mouth. And the way that we kind of tilt up and the strings and just her reaction, and she's surrounded by this perfectly symmetrical golden piece of art. You're just like, oh, this is awesome. Like we're creating something very, very fun. And then in the edit, you realize it too when you're like, oh, this is funnier than I thought, or these performances are really coming together. I think the entire independent process is constantly rewarding as it is challenging.
Okay. How's the rehearsal process different? Like when you're wearing that many hats, like I know you're thinking about how it's going to look, and you're thinking of the editing and all that. So how is that kind of different once you've began to wear different hats instead of just as an actor?
Yeah, lucky for us, our production was kind of derailed by COVID for a moment
Okay.
early off, where we realized that this is not a good time to shoot because people were at risk, and so we had to push for quite some months. And during that time, we're like, well, let's keep our core group together and let's kind of rehearse. So it gave me some time to really start locking in a lot of production details, a lot of gear, and a lot of my crew. And it gave Mayada a chance to kind of orchestrate these rehearsals with us, where we would kind of go through the scenes, go through the blocking, because when you're on set, I think we shot this in like 8 days, and then
Oh,
a few additional reshoots. I'm probably butchering this. Mayada could tell me, but I think we ended up at like 12 days total by the end of it, or maybe less. Um, so when you have very limited time, that means you have very limited takes, which means that you kind of want to be as prepared as you can when you're sitting down, so you're not discovering on the first take and then realizing you're moving on, and you're like, oh man, if I had a second take, I have it now. So yeah, that rehearsal process is different, and we don't. The industry really doesn't allow for that luxury anymore. Like
yeah.
you don't get, especially when you're hired. You just show up. You're like, oh hey, nice to meet you. You're my mom. Okay, well let's act like we've known each other my entire life. Like
Yeah.
it's a little more of a skill set that you have to have now, because rehearsal isn't. We don't have the luxury of that as much anymore.
Um, how early did the music enter the storytelling process? Because I love the music in this movie. I mean, the music just was fantastic. So, how early was you thinking about the music?
Yeah, I love it too. It really is a character in itself, right?
Yeah.
I think it really helps to move the burn along. The music you heard in the score wasn't until after the movie was edited and together. Um,
Okay.
we had a general tone, like even Mayada had a Spotify playlist of different tracks that are just tonally accurate, and her and I have very similar taste in music. So there's a lot of like Nine Inch Nails and a lot of Trent Reznor, and like I don't know, we had some Massive Attack, we had a lot of just really like vibey tracks. So we knew that this was going to have some type of a 90s vibe to it. But I was very surprised at what organically came about when Eric started to play around with themes and tones in the score, because certain elements, like even just like simple electric guitar or whatever, like these were things that I did not anticipate, but it really it really resonated when they showed up. So that's the route we ended up going. But music is something that you can have an idea ahead of time and you can really want it, but if you don't listen to what the movie is trying to communicate with you, then
Yeah.
you can shoot yourself in the foot and suddenly things can feel off because you're forcing it into a box that it doesn't want to be in. Um, the our closing credit song was one song that we did licensed with an artist, and it was one an artist that the director was friends with, and it just really fit lyrically and really fit tonally, and that was a bit of an inspiration for the rest. But yeah, a lot of the songs were created from scratch out of necessity because we didn't have the budget to license tracks that we would have loved to have. So a couple of songs Eric and myself wrote together. I perform on some of them just again out of necessity, which I
Yeah.
think ended up kind of adding a cool, if you know my character, it would make sense to kind of hear that. Um, yeah, long story short, no, that the music wasn't done until after the fact, where it kind of was discovered after the movie was letting us know what it
Yeah.
wanted.
Awesome. Yeah, I noticed in this movie, there's a lot of tension um, between the characters. What was your approach in using sound to heighten that emotional tension?
Yeah, we have an amazing sound designer and mixer, Trevor Gates. This project we were lucky enough to have mixed over at Formosa Group, and again, another character outside of music, I think, would be the sound design in this. Subtle but pointed, I think really detailed. Yeah, there's so many moments that you feel things and you don't know why you feel them, and they're because of the silence in the room mixed with the atmospheric tension that was kind of crafted in post production. Trevor had this way about, especially in those final scenes in the art gallery room. You can just feel how thick the air is, and you can feel the tension. And uh, a lot of that was like, obviously, it's presented by performance and by pacing, but then he manages, and I don't know how he does this. He manages to create tones that feel like the room that aren't like actual like noticeable noises. I don't know if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah,
But
it does.
but yeah, am I answering your question properly? What you asked me
Yeah,
how it kind of adds to the
yes, yes, you're answering it properly.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, I was asking your approach to using sound to heighten the emotional tension.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a combination. It's sound and music just kind of tango together in creating that because they really do need to look out for each other. I think in the sense that you don't want them to conflict and smash with each other at any given moment and create like a muddy moment. So sometimes the music will drop out and sound will take over, or sometimes sound will just accentuate what's already there in the music and vice versa. So
Yeah. How did you balance the intimacy with the unease in sound design? Because there's some very intimate moments in this movie, and how did you balance that out with the uneasiness of the sound design in the film?
yeah, I think again, I know this probably like seems like a cop out answer, but it's really as simple as just like listening to what it's begging for, right? I think certain moments play just so well performatively that the silence becomes so deafening that it becomes uneasy, and
Uh,
that's a moment that you don't want to muddy with music and sound design, right? I feel like your best composers, if you hand them a scene uh, as an audition and they come back and there's no music there and you're like, hey, there's nothing here, and they're like, yeah, that's perfect for this scene. And
yeah.
you realize, you're like, okay, so this composer isn't just trying to fill the space egoically with their creations. They are there to accentuate what's on screen. And I think the best scores are those that you don't notice, you just feel, right? And then later
Oh
on,
yeah.
you're like, why did I feel uneasy as that person was just walking down the street? Like nothing was happening. You're like, oh, because I was kind of being emotionally guided by the music.
And speaking of the music, like were there moments where the music changed how you interpreted the scene? Like when y'all were adding the music to it, was there moments like how like, wow, this okay, maybe if we do it like this, or maybe we're interpreting this different than what we when we was originally filming?
Yeah, I think that it kind of is a bit of a memento in the sense that like you don't know what comes first, the chicken or the egg. You can't tell if it's really the performance doing it or if it's the music doing it, but they kind of sync in a way. I guess a great example would be, in the end, there's this like rising tension of this scene, and nobody's really moving, so you have to be very careful with your pacing. You have to be careful with the information you're portraying, and I think with your music and sound to keep the scene engaged and keeping it intact. But I think that a great example would be as the tensions were rising in the scene, the theme that we had going in the music, we played around with modulating it, right? As things got a little tighter, as like the ropes wound up, we would like modulate up a half key, which would kind of pull you a little bit tighter. And then when it would relax back down, we would drop it back down to the original key to kind of keep that moving parallel with what's happening in the scene. You want to trust if you're really listening and you're really present with the work, you it'll tell you if something's wrong. You'll know if it's off, and then you'll make adjustments. And then when it feels right, then you get to move on.
Cool. And you were also the second unit director, which is a huge responsibility on movies. So what did that role involve in Bright and in switching hats again? Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, going back to what we kind of said at the opening of this, it was again, it was a role of necessity. Mayada also is one of the leads in this movie, so there's a lot of times that she's deep in an emotional scene, and we don't have time for playback and all that. So I essentially would just step in and cover those scenes with her. In just, and she would put her trust in me to know that we have the emotional beats and that we have the right coverage and that we can move on. Um, there's a pivotal scene, I think, was when Atticus and Charlie are at the window and they're basically talking about how they feel currently in their relationship. And this ultimately calls them to the adventure of what comes next. And that was a scene that we had to hurry up and get before lunch because we wouldn't have more time after. And so we tried things. We played around with the dialogue, we played around with the blocking, and we grabbed what we could. And that was one that I had directed. The shower scenes, obviously she can't be in there and be behind the camera at the same time. And those were some elements as well. And then as we're building out our climb to them arriving at the loft, there's a lot of driving scenes that I went out and brought my second unit DP Devin Dadoon with me and brought him out to the streets of Pomona, and we grabbed certain elements of the car maneuvering through the landscape and kind of going from this busy valley North Hollywood-esque living to this very isolated, secluded downtown LA living, to kind of create that impending danger of, you can scream, but nobody will hear you, right? So we kind of venture out further past the train tracks, through the streets, and there's trains going by making really really loud noises and motorcycles, and then you just have silence where you can kind of hear the coyotes in the background, right? And you're like, okay, this is dangerous. So those were some scenes that I was able to go out and create. And this was after the fact because the edit was kind of calling for them and really needed some build up before we landed. And what it ultimately does is it really sets you up for the intended scenes to land and resonate the way that you intend for them to.
yeah, the film explores the illusion of freedom. That's like a theme in the film. So, what does that mean to you as in the context of the story of these characters?
And you asked what does it mean for me as a character or in general in the movie?
Yeah, what does it mean to you in the context of the story of these characters? The illusion of freedom, the web of characters, where it's these four characters and it's kind of a web between them, the
Yeah.
illusion of freedom between each character.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think especially when you look at the themes of like open relationships and polyamory, and by definition, it seems like there's a lot of freedom there, right? No control, and allowing you to kind of express yourself freely, emotionally, sexually, whatever that looks like. Um, but then you realize that um, there are more difficulties, and it's not as free as you would think, because you can't necessarily have your cake and eat it with relational dynamics. And so I think thematically, the ropes are there. Shibari plays a really good parallel to the relational tensions and kind of the ties that bind them. That's one of our taglines, the ties that bind us.
Yeah.
Um, it you feel like you have this freedom to move around, yet you are you're drawn into scenarios and drawn into basically the consequences of your actions, right? Every action has a reaction, and we play around with that theme throughout a few times. There's a moment where Charlie walks to the front door, and there are her clothes and her phone, and the door is right there, and it's not locked, and nobody's stopping her, and she could leave, but she chooses to go back in and engage. And I think that um, often we like to think that we have freedom, but our minds are wired in a way that kind of control our behavior.
Yeah. How do you think that the emotion and reality collided for each character? Like, if you was going to take each character, how do you think that collided for each one, without giving away the movie?
Yeah, could you repeat that again?
Like the desired emotional reality collide for each of these characters in a different way. I think. So like if you took each character's view, how do you think that collided for each character without giving away too much of the movie, if you could do that for
Yeah,
each of the
how do
four
I think
characters?
I keep missing the one word you're saying. What for each character?
The desired emotional reality for each character. The I guess the split between each character of what I'm saying, that emotional reality that they go through during the film,
Hmm.
uh, without giving away too much of the film.
Yeah, that's a good question. So if I'm hearing you right, you're asking like what the emotional arc of each character is throughout.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I mean, I think you have these two very imperfect characters in the opening who are dealing with loss and heartbreak and are essentially a broken relationship. And I think that they're just looking to try to get back to how things used to be, which we know we can never do. And they set out to try to fix that through ways that um, they're hoping will help mend. And they set out and engage with two other characters that have agendas of their own, and perspectives of their own. Uh, but for as much as they differ, there's a lot of overlapping consistencies with all of them. Where Atticus is a pretty nihilistic artist, who both looks up to and hates Sebastian for his success, right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and I think that there's an emotional pull there of respect and disdain, and then of course Charlie is this uptight woman, and it's unfair to just call her uptight. She's been through a lot of emotional trauma, but she kind of enters into this world with Naomi, who's just completely free and willy-nilly. And I mean, I think one line that describes her perfectly in the movie is she's just like, well, if you need to strip down to a bikini, why wear anything at all? Right? Like
yeah,
she's just very free with everything and doesn't believe in apologies. Um, and I think that Charlie as well battles with what she feels and knows while also kind of respecting and has a bit of disdain for Naomi. So there's a lot of consistent parallels with these characters. But emotionally, I think that they're all just after feeling respected and feeling as though their boundaries are respected, and um, wanting to go full circle, wanting to feel as though that they have the freedom to express themselves. even if that freedom is an illusion.
Oh, cool. Where do you think the fantasy and consequence intersects in this film?
Fantasy and consequence.
Yeah, yeah. Is there like a moment, or or that you could point out, or again, without giving too much away?
I think the fantasy and consequence would intersect off screen in this movie. It's the reason why we're called to this evening. And anyone who has seen the movie, I think, will understand that. There's a reason that they're all there, and it's because fantasy has crossed some lines and boundaries that has disturbed the web.
Yeah.
And the
Um,
spider is coming.
so what are some things that you hope the audience takes away from Bite?
I hope that they I hope that the audience, after seeing the movie, leave with questions and leave with really good discussion points on, not only just open relational dynamics, but also boundaries and trust and I also hope that this movie, I think it's a bit cathartic for those who do not let the intrusive thoughts win, right? Um,
Yeah.
these characters let them win, and you see the consequences of that. But hopefully, it's a bit therapeutic and cathartic for those who may have had similar experiences and wanted to do the same thing, and that they're able to kind of express that through watching this versus expressing it in real life.
Yeah.
Right. Uh, but I hope that they leave just feeling like that their sexuality, that their relational dynamics are not something that they need to be ashamed of, and that they can have open dialogues with their partners and with others, with their friends in general. I think that when you keep things a bit taboo, they don't get discussed, and I think that becomes problematic. So I think open communication as a result of seeing this movie would be a huge plus.
Yeah, I watched it the other night, and it just yeah, it just reels you in. The characters do, and it takes I don't want to give anything away, but it takes a wild turn. I'll
Yeah,
just
yeah,
say
yeah. It's so hard. It's so hard to not spoil. You want to talk about details, but I agree. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for talking with me and chatting with me about the film. And where can people watch or follow the film?
Yeah, Kevin, thank you. Thank you for having me here and asking all these great questions and allowing me to gloat about our creation.
Oh,
Um,
that's great.
Yeah. Well, right now we're out fully on most major streaming platforms. You can find Byte on Apple TV. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Google Play, Fandango. There's a lot of different VOD outlets for it. But if you're into these types of slow burn thrillers and you want to get back to kind of the black box theater type performances and you want to get engaged, please give us a try and give us a watch. And if you love it, throw us a review so more people can get some eyes on it. With indie filmmaking, it's all word of mouth. We don't have the budgets to be on billboards and buses and sponsored ads. So really, it's just about you sharing, whether it's on Letterboxd or IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes. Just get out there and really share what you think of this and show your support for indie filmmaking, so that way we can keep making movies like this.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate you very much.
All
Thank
right.
you.
You're welcome. I wish you the best.
You as well. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.